Wildling Press presents How Do I Book? Welcome to How Do I Book by Wildling Press. We like to chat about book writing, book publishing, book marketing, and of course, book reading. We're trying to help new and experienced authors develop their craft, widen their perspectives, and learn to get a little wild every once in a while. I'm Grace, and boy, do I have a treat for y'all today. I am joined by the one and only Valley Haggard, an absolute powerhouse in the Richmond writing community. Hi, Valley.
Hi, Grace.
How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. That was quite an introduction.
Oh my gosh, I'm not even done yet. Let me tell the people about you. So Valley has published 3 books: The Halfway House for Writers, Surrender Your Weapons, and There's No Accounting for the Strangeness of Things. She's received Richmond Magazine's Teresa Pollock Prize, Style Weekly's Women in the Arts Award, and the James River Writers Emil Jenkins Award. Valley is also a Reiki master and shamanic Reiki practitioner. So, yeah, she's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Valley.
Oh, my pleasure. It's exciting to be here.
Yay. Before we go any further, though, can you share your pronouns with us?
Sure, I am she, her.
Okay, perfect. Well, the rest of the Wildlings and I have been wanting to have you on the podcast since day one, basically. So I'm so happy you're here. Let's just get right to it. I'm so excited to talk to you. So, Valley, can you give us just like a little thumbnail version of how you got here? What led you down this career path? That's a big question.
Version.
I know.
It's a hard one for a writer to answer.
I know.
Well, I've always been passionate about writing my whole life, and then I started to hate it. As a paid writer, I started hating writing, so I decided I had to develop or find a way to not hate writing, or I was going to be really sad for the rest of my life. I started teaching classes, the kind that I would want to take, that would be the most encouraging and the most fun, and try to return joy to the writing process. So that's what I've been doing for the last, I think, 13, 14 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah, starting with kids and now working with adults. And so it's just kind of spread from classes to also retreats and the various publications that have happened and individual sessions and just whatever fun things that I can find that people will agree to do with me.
Cool.
To keep writing alive. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've been writing for like your whole life. Is that true? Did you start really young? And then also, did you always know that you wanted to kind of build a life around writing?
Well, I really wanted to build a life around reading.
Okay.
I told my mom I was going to grow up to be a famous reader when I was little. I was about 7.
I
just devoured books. I devoured books and was kind of the nerdy, quiet, shy kid, scared of, PE and
this is totally unrelatable
outside.
To me.
Oh, right. Nobody listening can relate either.
No.
I'm not quite sure. Yeah. I mean, my mom would make me go outside as a kid. Like, you have to go outside because I just want to read.
Aww.
And so, I think it's a very natural progression to go from loving reading to beginning to write. When writers are your heroes, it's like you just want to follow in their path and try to enter that world any way you can.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anyone, when you were growing up, any authors that you really loved and that sort of inspired you?
Yeah. My first true love was Madeline L'Engle.
Oh, yeah.
From A Wrinkle in Time. And I just, she wrote in such a way that I felt like I knew her and she knew me and felt like she loved kids and that I could enter her universe. And I read tons and tons of stuff, but she's the writer that as a young person just really stands out as somebody I just had that love affair with. And as I got a little older, middle school and high school and stuff, I definitely branched out and started reading, more adult writers. But I guess as the young person, I remember her the best.
That's awesome. I love her too. And I think I also read, did you do a workshop with her or something?
I did. I got to do that. Yeah. When I was 17, she was doing a writing workshop at the Omega Institute, which is in upstate New York. And you had to be, it was an 18 plus workshop. And I was 17. And my mom encouraged me to write to her individually and ask if she would make an exception for me.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's the kind of person my mom was. Yeah, my mom just encouraged me every single step of the way. So I did. And she said, sure. And so we went up. It was coincided with my college interviews, like touring, going up to visit colleges and stuff. So I got to take a workshop with her, which what a phenomenal experience for me.
Yeah.
And, she was already in her 80s then, I think, and died. It wasn't right away, but I'm awfully glad, like what an honor to meet her while she was here on this earth.
I was reading a Richmond Magazine article about you. And when you were talking about your time at the Omega Institute writing workshop, you're quoted as saying that you wrote a story that was sort of the genesis of everything you do now. Do you want to talk a little bit about the story that you mentioned and kind of about that experience?
Sure, Grace. Wow, you're a great researcher.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
I'm so impressed. It was basically the first kind of creative nonfiction class I'd ever taken. I'd only written fiction up to this point, and so it was the first time I was trying to write about my life, other than just in my diary. I don't know exactly what brought me to the story of kind of, a central story of my parents' divorce. And that to me, I guess every parents' divorce is, a huge fissure in their lives.
Yeah.
But it also, this story I wrote kind of centered around my dad's alcoholism and his second wife, who was pretty wild. She left him for another woman, but she'd also tried to strangle my dad because she was jealous of me. Whoa. And she was pretty unhinged. And and there were just a lot of things I didn't know about when I was a kid, but that I'd found out kind of right around this time that I was taking this workshop, found out the extent to which kind of their relationship was completely insane. And they both relapsed and ended up in rehab. And so the story kind of centers around me and Dad moving after they got divorced, and then the things that I kind of came to find out about their marriage, but also just about my dad, and then in some ways later about myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you feel that sort of inspired what you're doing now?
Well, it was it was this realization that I had access to stories that I had lived. I mean, it's I had loved writing fiction, but I got, totally fell in love with the line, truth is stranger than fiction. And that became this tagline that I just followed because it felt like weird things were happening everywhere. And, kind of coming into consciousness out of childhood and looking at your own life and being like, wait a minute, some of those things weren't normal. You know,
sometimes you don't have that perspective. I mean, well, a lot of times as you're going through it, and it could be something as simple as having a conversation with someone about whatever happened, and then they're looking at you and you're like, wait, everyone doesn't experience that. What? Exactly.
So I think I became interested in kind of both of my parents have very colorful lives. And lots and lots of characters coming through my life. And I was attracted to people I would describe as real characters. And so I just, that kind of style that also wasn't really, I guess my fiction was kind of almost a surreal kind of, or I wanted it to be anyway, kind of magical realism.
Yeah.
And this was the first time I was just writing the truth is pretty interesting in and of itself. And I feel like that thread followed me.
So as I mentioned at the top of the episode, you've authored 3 books, and I want to mention them again. The Halfway House for Writers, Surrender Your Weapons, and There's No Accounting for the Strangeness of Things. Can you talk a little bit about your process writing each of those and how maybe that process differed?
Sure. Yeah. So the Halfway House for Writers, I call the handbook that got out of hand because I had been asked to teach a master class at the James River Writers at their conference, and I was asked in January. The conference was in October, So I was like, you know what? I better write a few things down. Like, I'm not going to bring handouts from other people.
Right.
I'm going to create my own handouts.
Cool.
And so I started writing down things that I'd kind of learned about the writing process, just from having done it and been teaching and stuff like this for a number of years. And so the list, the pieces just kept getting longer and longer, and it kept kind of growing. And I asked, I was doing a barter with a friend who I was like, can you please make this like a pamphlet or like a handout? And what he presented me was a book. And I was like, no, it's not a book. And I was actually devastated, Grace, because when I got the galley, I just cried and cried and cried because I hadn't meant to self-publish my first book.
You're like,
hilarious. I was like, I didn't mean to do this. And I'll tell you, it's like one of the best accidents that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Because having no expectations for something really makes anything that happens pretty exciting.
It's true. It's a great way to do things.
I know. And it's probably been one of the books that, of the three, that's been really the most popular, because I feel like it is just kind of the basics of everything that I learned about how to bring kind of joy back into the process and how to lower the bar so that you're not constantly overwhelmed and thinking you're not good enough and that you suck and that everyone else is better and that you have to have, be a writer with a capital W. And I always felt unorganized, undisciplined, sloppy. And it was like, how can I take like the disaster of my own writing life and kind of work with it? Make it use the things and develop my own style and not the one I've always heard about. Yeah. And so I think when people read it, they just feel kind of a relief or permission, like, oh, it doesn't have to be what I thought it was. Like I can make it this thing that kind of coincides with who I already am. And it's also really about healing our writing wounds, because I think so many of us receive wounds in the writing process because it's so vulnerable, writing. And people, like, one comment when you're a kid about you don't know how to spell or this is a bad paper, and people can be really cruel and brutal and they might think they're being helpful, but it shuts people down in a big way towards their own creativity. And so my idea was kind of this, I think of this as, that halfway house, like rehabilitation for wounded writers.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that happened that way. And that was in 2015. And then, a couple of years passed and I was like, but I have all this new material that's kind of, and I'd also been trying to write a memoir and I had all this new like stuff that I wished I'd put in the first book. So I ended up just kind of, this is going to sound like a quick, easy process. And it was not, it was a mess and I didn't know what I was doing, but I ended up kind of winding together the memoir and the handbook, like kind of handbook too. And when I'd give, like, I'd say like writing sex, so then I'd share pieces I had written or from my memoir, like writing money. So then I'm writing about my own money experience. Yeah. So it's kind of a weaving together of memoir and writing advice.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I think that's also like a great way to do it, because I think when people are reading a book like that, it's really nice when an author shares like their own actual experience instead of like hypotheticals and
Yeah. And it just kind of blended together that way for me. So that was Surrender Your Weapons, Writing to Heal. Yeah. And a cool thing that's happened with that is that's a book that's been used in prisons with incarcerated folks and also veterans and a couple of other kind of communities that other teachers and other people have taken Surrender Your Weapons into other communities. And that's just amazing. Been really cool to see happen.
Yeah. That is very cool. How did that come about? Were you reaching out to people or did people reach out to you?
No, people found it. I'm the worst. I don't know how to market something to save my freaking life. The other thing is I will finish a book and then I'm just done with it. I don't want to do anything else with it. I'm like, I'm done. Been there, done that. And I mean, literally, I'm like, oh, I don't have any more energy. I put it all into writing it. And so I have literally done like nothing with Surrender Your Weapons or really any of them. The reasons that I've written them kind of has just been to use within my own classes and just like the path that I'm on, but I suck at trying to share. So really what's happened is just people who found them have contacted me and been like, hey, I'm doing this. And I've thought, well, I should contact other people and see if they want to do it too. And then I haven't. Well, let's just say I haven't done that yet.
I believe in you, Valley. Although very cool that it's just happening without you having to do anything. That's amazing.
Well, on a small scale, you know.
But it sounds.
But it is.
It is happening, cool. And it sounds like your book is getting to people who would really benefit from it. So that's really amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And it's kind of like, if it helps, I don't know. I used to have the big, like, New York Times bestseller, Oprah, and thought I was a failure if I didn't achieve some kind of what I called success at that time.
Right.
And that dream died a really just grisly death for me. And I just don't have that dream anymore. And I just don't care. I don't even want it. Yeah. What I want to do is like have connections with particular people.
Totally.
And when that happens, it's so awesome. And I just don't have that big, like, I have to be famous anymore. In fact, that sounds really awful now. Awful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like what you're after is really meaningful connections. And I think that sort of, you have your own character arc in that way. And I think that's actually really beautiful. So, Valley, I think that how I first learned about you was through your work with Richmond Young Writers and Life in 10 Minutes. Do you want to talk about those endeavors and kind of what inspired you to get those started?
Sure. Yeah. So I was on the board of the James River Writers, and the director, or the president of the board at the time, kept asking me if I knew of a creative writing camp for kids, because she wanted her son to take creative writing camp. And I kept saying, no, I don't know of one. No, I don't know of one. And then finally, it's like, how dumb am I? Why don't I just teach a creative writing camp? Because that's what I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
It was like a 2x4 over the head, and I kept missing it. So I'm finally like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I was going to do it in her attic. But then it was like, well, I had developed a relationship with Chop Suey Books from doing book reviews for a long time. And I was like, wait a minute, they have a gallery upstairs. Let me ask if I can do it there. And they're like, sure. And then because I'd been doing style book reviews, I knew a lot of authors. And so I asked them if they would come in and be special guests and stuff. And everybody's like, sure, yeah.
Amazing.
And then I asked the Bird, I was like, can the kids come in and do readings on Friday afternoons? And he was like, yeah, sure. So they got to have readings. It just happened. It fell together really quickly, really naturally. And I was in love with it, absolutely in love, because I had gone to a creative writing program camp as a teenager, but that was a sleepaway camp that was totally transformative. And that was the Young Writers Workshop at UVA.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I'd done it. I'd gone as a camper for 2 summers and then returned as a counselor for 2 summers.
Oh, nice.
It was just like, I don't think I'll ever go to a high school or college reunion, but I'll go to the Young Writers Workshop reunion every time.
Nice.
Like, I found my people.
Oh, gosh, that's awesome.
It was. And so to be able to offer even a fraction of that to kids here, where like the thing about the Young Writers Workshop that I took is they treated us like writers. We weren't kids at camp who were trying out writing. We were writers. And they gave us so many fantastic opportunities with real writers who treated us with real respect and dignity. So anyway, I started doing that in 2009 and got a partner, Bird Cox, who's amazing. And we did it together for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then I kind of peeled off, and she has held the reins and is doing her own wonderful things with Richmond Young Writers to this day.
Amazing.
So it's been about 14, 15 years. And I had been writing for Style and working at Style's offices as well. And in 2008, like many, many other folks, I got laid off. And my husband had just decided to become self-employed brilliantly right before the whole crash. So we had like no health insurance. We were eating like rice and beans. We were a mess.
Yeah.
We were a mess.
That's scary.
And so I know. I started teaching adult classes just like out of desperation.
Wow.
Because I was like, I need to try something. And I just knew I would like commit Harry Carey if I had to go like do a full-time copy editing job, because I'm a terrible copy editor and I'm a terrible like employee in a lot of ways. So it's like, I was making the choice to kind of be poor obstinately, but I also knew like I'd rather be poor than dead.
Well, sure.
Like emotionally, spiritually, mentally.
Yes.
So, and people thought I was crazy because, you know, I wasn't just running out to try to get a job with health insurance, but I started a class at Black Swan Bookstore, which is no longer there, but it was at Robinson and Maine, used in rare books. And I had a writing group that met there every Tuesday night for years. And I was like, what if I taught a class there at night? So I asked the owner and he's like, sure, here, you know, you still have the key. Go ahead. So I put it up on Facebook, which is my only marketing tool that I've ever figured out.
You got to go with what you know.
That's all I know. And it filled, like the first class I put up filled. And I left that class thinking that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like it was just joyful and magical. Yeah. And so it's just grown little by little by little since then. You know, then I started teaching in a couple different bookstores and coffee shops. And eventually we got a space above Chop Suey and then a space like further down in Carytown, which is like a workshop writing studio. And then COVID hit and I eventually, a couple months in, gave up the studio space. Bird's still there with Richmond Young Writers, luckily. But I started taking all my classes to Zoom. And then also now that I'm doing some in-person things and just finding different ways to do it, but also a lot of retreats, trying to find more in-person ways to gather.
That's cool. What would you say you love most about writing? It could also be about teaching. I know that you've described writing as transformational, and I just would love to hear you speak a little bit more about that.
Thank you. So I have really, over the years, like I was talking about kind of the death of the dream of like that, you know, the New York Times bestseller list or whatever. Yeah. And after that dream died, I just started focusing on the process rather than the product. And what has really always been true is that the process of writing has changed how I feel. You know, and I think so many people can relate to this. You sit down and you just feel like shit. You feel like terrible, desperate, crazy. And you write for a while and you're like, you know what? I feel kind of better. And the way that, you know, when you're in a group doing that, the group energy, everybody can start out feeling one way. And by the end of a class, everyone feels differently. And it does over time. I just realized that writing is energy work. It changes our energetic state, which is why I started studying Reiki and shamanic Reiki to really look at how are we changing our energy? What can we do? And so I think about writing now much more in terms of like, how we feel and what's happening to us while we write rather than what comes out of the writing. And lots of amazing things do come out of it. But I think if we're too product focused, you know, it just can be soul stripping and you kind of miss out on, you know, so my classes, everybody does some really deep, intimate, like soul bearing stuff, maybe not right away, but that's kind of the direction everyone's going. And to share your shit in a group, the stuff you've been the most ashamed about, it's so freeing. It can take off like years and years of shame and secrecy and feeling alone. And then you find out other people start writing about their experiences of similar things. And you just also, you know, they've done a lot of scientific studies on what happens to us physically after doing creative writing, expressive writing. It lowers stress hormones and we're able to heal more quickly, like on a physical, but also mental, emotional levels. And when we listen to other people read their expressive writing, the brain releases oxytocin. So we have the love hormone along with like stress reduction. And it really, truly, you physically feel different.
You definitely touched on this, but my next question is like, how do writing and energy work come together for you? I don't know if you can expound upon that at all.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things that's so experiential. It can be a little bit hard to talk about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
I think that when we can get ourselves in a calm, balanced, kind of meditative state, we're able to drop down to a deeper place and access stories and access memories and access parts of ourselves for our writing that we might not always have just easy access to. So I think a lot of kind of doing the energy work can help us bring up what needs to be written. It kind of works within our subconscious to aid in the writing process.
Yeah.
And I think the writing process opens up stuff within us that we then can do some energy work and releasing to kind of clearing some of the darkness that comes up and some of the feelings that come up in our bodies. We can kind of work on clearing and expelling what's held within us and what we're ready to release.
Valley, I know that you offer private sessions and workshops and retreats. You're doing it all. You're doing it all, lady. Can you talk about what someone might get out of like each of those and which option would be best for like someone who is looking for like a particular outcome?
Yeah. I would always really recommend to everyone starting with a workshop because the group experience offers something that writing alone just never will, because everyone's doing, I mean, everybody has their own safe space and the feedback is our first draft writing is very protected. So there's no critique process per se. Right. But everyone is encouraged and people go deeper and deeper and deeper into the stories. And we prompt each other. So within a group of other writers, you're getting ideas are coming towards you all the time to how to further your own writing process, because we're both listening and reading and reading our own work out loud. So many different things are happening on a lot of different levels in a class. But some people, for reasons of either privacy or they have a really specific project they want to work on and really need some structural help or accountability, deadlines, that kind of thing, will set up private sessions. Okay. And also I do private sessions for like a Reiki and writing session where we'll do kind of that experience that I just described, where we'll, get into those meditative states and then see what comes and then write about it and then do some clearing and Reiki to kind of find kind of a wholeness. Sometimes when we write at a really deep level, we just feel so open and exposed. Yeah. And I think the energy work is a way of kind of putting us back together a little bit. So those would be individual sessions. The workshop I would recommend to everyone and anyone because it's such a neat experience. And then retreats they're really special and we don't all have the opportunity to do retreats for various reasons. But if we can, I feel like I don't feel like it should be considered a luxury, even though I know that for many people, it just will be. But I think it's a necessity because it's such a deep way of refilling. And we're in a crazy world, in crazy times. We're busy. Everything's insane. And to be able to step outside of that for a little bit and really refuel, nourish, fill up, get kind of an overview, like a sense of where we are, to feel creative and to feel heard. And, it's just invaluable because then you can take that back into your world with this renewed energy and a way to kind of give back or re-enter your life. So I'm doing a couple different retreats right now and kind of a new process for retreats that I've started. It's called the Healing Narrative, where it's a 4-day retreat and we do work on our personal timelines and an archetype work and our hero's journey. And in those ways, we really can kind of look at our whole lives in a different way and kind of find where we are in the mythological realm of, within the world and ourselves. And one of them, we're also going to Yogaville for part of the time to do some, just add in some different modalities. I have one coming up in Virginia Beach. We're going to go to the Edgar Cayce Institute and do some dream work. Fun. Yeah. So I think a lot of people just don't give themselves the gift of time and nurturing. And, and I can especially say there are so many women and caregivers who are giving so much to others that they're kind of in like critical condition and really need to give to themselves. And this can be one way to do it. Yeah. So can people sign up for a retreat through your website? Is that how? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. valleyhaggard.com. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm offering a retreat in Costa Rica with another writer named Anoa Mancho, who's just absolutely incredible. And we're doing it together in March 2024. And she's a yoga teacher and a writer. And I'm going to be doing energy work and writing. And it's going to be in Costa Rica.
Oh my
So there's going to be
gosh.
like waterfalls and volcanoes involved and stuff like that.
So good.
Yeah, I think, and Anoa, one of her like yoga specialties is like yoga for rest.
Okay. I love that.
It's like none of the like fast aerobic yoga. This is like about, it's restorative and restful and intuitive. So anyhow, yeah, that's something I'm excited about too.
That's amazing. So one of the many things that I love about you, Valley, is you're just such a part of the writing community here in Richmond. And I was wondering, for authors who are looking to kind of break into their local writing communities, what advice do you have for them? And how have you successfully established so many lasting connections? Because truly, I feel like you're so well connected. It's amazing.
Well, thank you, Grace. I think that what I have found is if you can't find what you're looking for or you get rejected from what other people have, you just have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of been like,
you've done that.
That's
so
been
many
my
times.
guiding light so many times. Like I was really desperate to get back kind of in the writing community after some time away, like about 20 years ago. And I asked to join this writing group of these people that I'd heard about it. And like, they rejected. I mean, they actually wanted a submission.
Oh, I see.
And then they said, no, we don't want you in our writing group. And I was like, oh my God. I just didn't even consider that a possible outcome.
Yeah.
But I was like, so I was like, oh, that sucks. It hurt my feelings. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to start my own writing group. And then, I did. And we met for years. And it was like such a supportive, wonderful, amazing group. Joining the James River Writers was something I would definitely recommend to anyone in this community who feels isolated or wants some writing connections. They have stuff going on all the time. It's a nonprofit. They have a lot of workshops, and it's a great way to get involved and meet people and get connected. Also, for me, it was like just taking writing classes. I took classes at the VMFA. That's actually how I met a lot of other writers back when I felt really, really disconnected. And any kind of writing class you can find, whether it's mine or at the Visual Arts Center, or, there's all different kinds of writing groups you can join, but try meeting people that way. And if you can't join them for any reason, start your own group.
Yeah.
I don't have thick skin, which is something that's supposedly a requirement for writers. And so I had sent my manuscript out and I got 2 rejections and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I started a press.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I can't deal with this. I don't have thick skin. But what I realized, I was like, you know what? In this day and age, if I want a book, I get to have a book.
Yeah.
It might not come into the world the way I thought it was going to, but I am not a helpless victim of like big book.
Right. You're making it happen.
World. Yeah. You, and we all can.
Yeah.
We all can. We have agency. We can find wonderful groups like Wildling who can help us along the writing process. We can make a zine. I'm from the era of zines, I love
zines. Yeah.
Yeah. We can do zines. Blogs, the internet. I mean, we can write and get our work out there without having to pass through the gatekeepers. I think a willingness to put yourself out, and that's what you have to do in some way or another. By joining, showing up at different literary events, man, I did a lot of that.
Yeah.
I just showed up at lots and lots of readings. I just threw myself in really hardcore for a long time. And now I'm kind of like, I'm too tired. I don't want to go out at night.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm like an old lady now. I'm like, oh my God, it's 6:00. I'm a pumpkin. Yeah,
no, I get that for sure.
Yeah. But in my prime, I did a lot of going out and joining things and reading authors' books and then talking to them about it, stuff like that.
It's really important to just be very authentic, I think, when you're putting yourself out there and stuff. It can be hard. You feel like you've got to like present yourself in a certain way, maybe, or something like that. But I think that you're so authentic, and that's definitely something people should take away. It's just like, be yourself, be persistent, and make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm not a fiction writer anymore. I'm a terrible liar. I can't put on a face. I can't pretend to be somebody else. I can't pretend to have a thick skin if I don't. And so it's like it's felt like a curse in some ways one of my mentors says, rejection is redirection. So I have felt rejected so many times and then been like, okay, well, then there's something else. And it's grabbing onto that something else again and again and again.
Yeah. Got to get back up. I love that. Valley, I know you're so busy, clearly, as we've discussed. You have 1,000 things going on. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But is there anything you want to talk about in terms of just like what you're doing now? Any projects you're working on?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been working on a project for a long time that's kind of finally coming together, which is I'm making an oracle card deck. Called the Sacred Circle Writing Oracle. And it's 88 cards, each with kind of a different prompt and a different sigil, which is kind of a symbol that I think is representative to me of what that prompt was. And so I'm in the process of having those kind of printed and using my artwork and stuff. So hopefully that will be kind of I don't know, I love oracle card decks. So it's kind of like I love books. So I'm like, I'm going to write. I love oracle card decks, so I'm going to make one. So that's something that I think is just fun that I'm working on. Yeah, I think, gosh, I always have a million ideas kind of happening simultaneously. And the reality is I usually need to just pick a couple. And I'm kind of in a period of like, okay, just chill. Yeah. Just chill for a minute. Just chill.
That's good though. I mean, that's a great place to be.
It is. Yeah. It is.
And as a reminder, you did mention the retreat that you're doing in March. So just that sounds super fun. So
yeah. What are you up to, Grace?
What am I up to? Yes. I feel like I'm super busy too. Just publishing books out here.
That's amazing.
We had Cursed Coven come out in September, and we just had Lavender Speculation come out this month. So we're very excited to have a couple new books out there in the world. Can't wait to see how they do. I know that those authors listen to this podcast, so shout out to you guys. Congratulations. So we're just working. We're just trying to.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're just really excited about the books that we currently have in production and can't wait to see them come to life. So
yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's so important. I mean, being like a book midwife.
Yeah.
You guys are doing beautiful work.
You, Valley, you are doing beautiful work. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you again for coming to talk to me today. I appreciate you so much. Are there any social accounts or anything you want to plug real quick before we wrap up?
It's all real simple.
Yes.
It's real simple. It's all just Valley Haggard. I'm on there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And then that's my website too.
Perfect. Everybody check out Valley on social media. Check out her website. She's amazing. Thank you so much, Valley. You're the best.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Grace.
And that's how you book. This episode was produced by me, Grace Ball. Our logo was designed by Michael Hardison. Our theme music was produced by Jason Hilton at Negative Selections on Instagram. Please visit us online at Wildling Press on social media or at wildlingpress.com.